Hi everyone, and thanks for having me. So this is the talk title that you voted for, but I thought that this is a little bit long. So I recalled it UX from scratch. And what I want to do today is convince you of three things. So one is that the lonely genius designer is a myth, and it's actually pretty easy to get started with UX stuff, and that you can do it. So if I want to convince you of things, well, Kevin gave away the parents joke. I have funny parents. Yes, that's actually my real name. So I work at an interface drill, that was the English word, at Jimdo. Until recently, I have also done UI development. I'm not doing that anymore, just focusing on UX design. And I have 3-year-old twins at home, with keep me getting up early in the morning. And I like to do and attend community events. So if we want to talk about UX, it's probably a good idea to ask, what is UX? And just Google it for fun and read through some of the 5 million results. I cannot tell you really what it is. I can say a little bit about what it means to me. And for me, it means what is the stuff that's happening between the clicks. And it is about validating a problem before you think about a possible solution, and then validating that solution. And it is about talking to people by asking questions and listening carefully and hopefully replacing assumptions with insights. The thing is that you cannot really build or ship an experience. I can only build and ship software. And however you do that, you have some kind of process. UX is actually a lot about process, and it's one of our terms that we don't like, you know. Maybe we don't need a process. Well, whatever you do to get your software shipped, that is your process. And I think if your process is not a circle, it's basically broken. It's about feedback and iteration. So in the sense of building software, this is what I call my true north of the software development cycle. True north is a term we use at Jimdo. This is when we imagine what would the situation be if we had no constraints, no problems all the time, and the money in the world to do. So this would be perfect unicorn land. So the cycle has 3 phases. You have a phase where you discover stuff, where you explore things, and you have a prototyping phase. You're not only designing here, but you're also deciding what you actually want to build. And then you have a crafting phase, like building production code by standards and best practices. So these phases are very blurry at the edges, and as you can see, you can be right in the middle of all 3 of them at the same time. So this is one part of the thing, but you need something in a smaller scope, like for all the tasks you're doing, and that is the daily grind cycle, which is very simply getting input, making some kind of output, and getting feedback. And same thing, it's also blurry at the edges, and this can last from a couple minutes to a couple days, but hopefully not longer. So this is all the process I need to do my work. So what I'm now missing is a couple tools, and this is again 3 things. I use a Github repository for design work that's just for the design work, and Keynote, the Apple presentation tool, and Paper, not some software, not Paper.js or something, just normal Paper. So Paper I hopefully don't have to explain, but why a Github repository? So this has totally changed how I work. I get all the Git goodness of keeping history of my changes, of files, and I can use existing GUI tools. This is not about being a terminal hero or something, just to keep the history. I have a distraction-free Markdown supporting writing environment right in the GitHub UI. I have an issue tracker, which can be accessed via API and transported into a Kanban board with various tools. I can reference and share the issues. I can have discussions. I can paste screenshots directly into the comment field. How awesome is that? You know, no files. Awesome. And I can integrate it into a Slack channel. And for example, at Jimdo, I have a Slack channel which watches like 6 or 7 repositories, so I get all the updates I want without cluttering my inbox with too much email. So it's pretty awesome. And the other part is Keynote. It's kind of the Swiss Army knife of everything. So here are some examples. You could collect screenshots of a user flow and put it onto slides, again, not to have hassle with files on your file system. You can make very simple wireframes by just drawing a couple boxes, and you could add some basic visual design. For example, you get the style guide of your company, and just by adding some CI colors and maybe the right typeface, people will have a much easier time to understand what you built than abstract boxes. And then you can set some hotspots and link slides, and suddenly you have an interactive prototype. and we actually did some pretty large usability studies with Keynote prototypes. It's working. So now we have our infrastructure and a little bit of process, and now I want to give you some methods to do, some ideas what to actually do as tasks, but I don't want to dump them on you, so we will spend 2 minutes on making kind of a map. So if you remember the first process of discover, prototype, and craft, we just make that into a line, knowing that this is repeating. And the same with the other circle. And now I have 2 lines, and I can build a matrix of that. So this is not a perfect model. I just made that up so you have some kind of orientation when and where to put stuff. But it's helpful at the start, definitely. So you have an idea for some kind of a feature or an improvement. So as with most matrices, you start on the bottom left. So you're in the discover phase, and you need to get some input. And the best thing to start this input phase, I think, is to do some status quo analysis. So Adi mentioned screenshots of the user flow to get your app or whatever it is on a better view from the user's point of view. And what you can also do is you can quantify these flows by hacking Google Analytics a bit. And you can make every clickable element pretending to be a page, and suddenly you have UI analytics. For you devs, this is pretty easy to make. Should take about an hour if you know how. And then you can look at how many how many people actually go through the flows that you think are used. The other most important thing when getting into the first phase is talking to your users. If you remember nothing else from this talk, please remember this. In order to verify or defy your assumptions or find out what problems people actually have, you need to talk to your users. You can't just think stuff up. So how could you do that? If you really want to actually talk to people, there are 2 ways to do that. You can do a simple research interview by scheduling first, so you have a deadline, then Googling a bit of do's and don'ts, collecting a couple questions, and then doing the call. And once you did that, you will be ready to do a very simple, quick and dirty usability study. Same way, you Google it a bit, you collect a couple of tasks, and then you invite people and do it. Maybe you're thinking, okay, I don't know, it's too early. I don't want to do that now. Well, maybe just talk to the support people for now. They are talking to your users all the time. And if you really want to learn a lot about the product and your users and yourself, then do an internship at support, like 3 days of a week or something. And this will give you some profound insights, to call it mildly, on how wrong many of your assumptions are that you have on your product and what you should build or fix. So we got some input. Now it's time for output, right? And I think the most important way to do output is sketching. And sketching is not drawing. Sketching is actually just thinking with your hands. Normally I do a live demo. We don't have time, so I will report the live demo in a sketch. So we put up 2 people on a stage with 2 flip charts, and they can't see each other. And they get the instruction to sketch as large as they want, and anywhere on the paper, these 5 things: a circle, a triangle, a square, a line, and a dot. You can sketch them anywhere you want, any size, but please use all the space. And when they're done, and we look at both of the things, we're getting something like this. Both people got the exact same instructions, requirements document, for example. And they could have argued for hours about the same instructions they got, but they were actually talking about totally different things. And Jeff Patton, it's one of my favorite quotes: shared documents are not shared understanding. Just when you actually shared the understanding, you have a shared understanding, not by sharing a Google Doc. The other thing that you can see from that is that these 5 objects are everything you need to do any kind of diagram and to sketch any kind of user interface. This is Twitter. I just did that an hour ago in 90 seconds. Just a couple of boxes, and a couple of circles, and a couple of lines. And this is also easy to practice. You can get any UI you want and just do a box sketch from it. So to tap quickly into a couple more things we can do with sketching, we will look at a design studio, doing sketchboards, having a paper lab, and then doing paper prototyping. So this is a design studio. You get in a room a diverse group of 10 white males. Well, at least they are diverse in roles. I have to exchange that picture, I'm sorry. So I like to use the so-called 685 method by a guy named Tetsuki Wafel. I will put all the links at the end of the slides. So all these people who are like from business and design and development and support maybe, they get a concrete challenge on what the problem is. And they get 5 minutes to do 6 to 8 sketches, very small sketches, more like this size. And then they present their solutions. They have 2 minutes to present that, and then they are getting feedback from everyone in the round, and everyone has 1 minute to give feedback. And then you repeat that process a couple times. And the key is that stealing good ideas is expected and encouraged. So over time, when you do that, I don't know, 2 hours or something, the group converges to the best possible solution because everybody is stealing the best ideas and incorporating into their own solution. So now you have like 200 sketches plus your own from the discovery phase before, so maybe printouts and some ideas from others. What do? You make a so-called sketchboard. This is just a larger piece of paper, and you slap a headline on it and put a lot of sketches on. And now you have a poster. And you can put that in your team room and stand in front of it with a group of people and talk about it and point at things and write post-its and make annotations. Once you started working with a lot of paper stuff, you might want to have a paper lab, and that is actually just a standing desk. If you can have some cupboard shelf space additionally, that is great, but a standing desk, empty standing desk, not cluttered with your computer or anything else, is a great workspace to do all kinds of paperwork. And once you have that, you can stand around the standing desk with a group and do some paper prototyping. This is a session we did, I don't know, half a year ago or something. This were 2 developers, me as a designer and somebody from support, and we tried with very simple post-its and drawing some boxes to make up an interface for the new feature we wanted to build. Okay, where are we now? Suddenly we have moved from the discovery phase right into the deepest middle of the prototyping phase. So the crafting phase approaches, you know? People want to know, well, when do we start building stuff? We need features, so let's build something. But what exactly do we want to build and in what order? And this is the right point to do a kickoff meeting. And in this context, by stakeholders, I mean literally everybody in all the teams who has to do some work of the new thing. Again, super diverse group of roles. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be at the meeting all the time, especially the CEO might want to get out early or something, but this is a space, a dedicated space, where every person can voice their expectations and concerns and hopes and past knowledge and stuff. And you write post-its for everything, and it's all there. Everybody's voice got heard. Super important as a human value, I would say. So this kickoff is also good to do story mapping. This is actually already the last method, but I will get a little bit more into depth because this has completely transformed how I look at things. So user story mapping is coming from the classic agile user story format. As a user role, I want something to get some value. I get most of you know it. The thing is, if you write a stack of user stories, you have a large pile of user stories. What then? So you start implementing them from the top or from the bottom, or you just pick one that sounds like you enjoy it. And this is where story mapping can really help. This is an example story map. Oh, this side. So on the top row, the yellow post-its, those are actually user stories that you would write in the classic format. But you have other colored post-its on top of that to like cluster your groups in the flow. And you have kind of a resolution of those stories on the other axis. And the important thing here is that these user stories are pinned one to next another in the flow. So this is the actual flow that a user goes through to achieve a job. This is a bit abstract, so there's a nice non-software example that the author of this method has developed. And it's called, "What did you do this morning until you arrived here at your seat?" So normally, again, you do this in a group workshop or something. So everybody writes Post-its on what they did this morning. And you get a bunch of Post-its like this. Of course, most people showered. You brush your teeth. You actually need to get up from the bed, right? You need to drive here and leave your luggage and get your badge, and then you can sometimes eat. Some people run early in the morning or take out their dog for a walk and stuff like that. So you can now sort all of these into one large line if you want to. But the more important thing is to cluster them in like bigger groups of activities. So you need to get ready at home, that's one point. You need to move to the location by bike or car or a bus or whatever you want. And then when you're at the location, you need to get to your seat. And the question to ask now is, which one of these tasks, of these user stories, are actually essential to get the job done, to get to your seat? And then you end up with something like this. You have your 3 cluster marks on top. And you have one row of steps that are totally essential to actually see the talk. And then you have a couple of tasks that maybe are not that important. The thing is here that only an unbroken flow can be validated. And by that I mean, if you take out driving here in the middle, then the flow is broken. If you start implementing like getting up as a feature and on the other hand getting to your seat as a feature, if you want, you cannot complete the whole flow. Other things are optional and you can implement them later. Like, I enjoy showering in the morning, but I could watch all the talks without doing it. And once you have this map, again, then you can stand around it with a group of people and talk about it and have a discussion. Like, for example, for me, brushing my teeth is pretty essential, but you could argue that, well, you can definitely watch the talks without having brushed your teeth. And then you find a common ground, hopefully. So all in all, you could say that this is lower quality, but getting these user stories in that you want to have but are not really necessary to build your MVP, that's usually where scope bloat happens. And I can so recommend getting this book. Only the first 2 chapters are really about user story mapping because it's actually pretty quickly explained. The rest of the book is really sane software development, sane way of working together in a team or even between teams. And Jeff Patton is the guy who coined the term, shared documents are not shared understanding. And we are still here, but we totally shifted perspective now. So we came from generating lots of possible solutions, and now suddenly we have a perspective on what actually needs to be built and in what order. And people can at least start to prepare stuff, or maybe even start to implement the first user stories. Hopefully from the left to the right, so you can start testing your flow after story 2. And this is more or less all I could fit into 20 minutes. So if you want more methods, then I can recommend this book, The User Experience Team of One. And this is mostly written for new designers who are in a development team and who don't have other designers to work with. But it's like the perfect book because you get dozens of methods on very quick pages. So I hope I could convince you a little bit that you can do it. And design is much more about doing some work than about talent. And it's easy to get started. And I don't just hope that we build red shit, but that we build red shit together. So, no, wait. Thanks for listening.